Next year, I will host every member of NATO for our 2024 summit in the United States. Together, we'll celebrate the 75th anniversary of the strongest defensive alliance in the history of the world, NATO. And let there be no doubt, the commitment of the United States to our NATO alliance and Article 5 is rock solid. And every member of NATO knows it. And Russia knows it as well. An attack against one is an attack against all. It's a sacred oath. Sacred oath to defend every inch of NATO territory.
Well, last I checked, Ukraine is not NATO. The NATO alliance has moved closer to Russia inch by inch. With us now to talk about this is former state senator from Virginia, Senator Richard Black. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. You have a lot of experience in the military. You're former colonel, also was in the Marines. You've got a lot of insight into this. I feel like we're headed into a serious world war. Either that or a very, very cold war. Which one do you think it's going to be?
My projection is that it will be a hot war. I think we have had this on the burner since 2014 when President Barack Obama authorized a coup that overthrew the elected government of Ukraine and installed a revolutionary junta. Afterwards, we began flooding them with very advanced weapons. We built up a very robust Ukrainian armed forces, and they commenced a war against the Russian-speaking areas on the border, but principally the Donbass Republic. And there were 14,000 people who died before Russia ever got involved in the war. So Russia hated to get into this war, and they delayed and delayed and delayed, and they tried to work out arrangements with NATO where NATO would stop its interference right up to their border. But I think the decisions on war don't just come up spontaneously the way we think they do in the movies. They're usually geopolitical maneuvers that are planned sometimes decades in advance, but at least 10 years in advance. And I think this one was. And where it leads us now is we've seen this inevitable escalation where we debated, well, will we send, certain weapons there? And we've gone from missiles, and we've gone to HIMARS, guided rockets, and now we're up to tanks. It seems fairly clear to me we're going through this little two-step propaganda movement where we're saying, well, we really don't want to send the jets, but other people want to send the jets. Eventually, we're going to send the jets. Just last night, I ran across an article where Britain is going to provide advanced cruise missiles with a range of 180 miles so that these things can be put on the Russian border. We can actually attack deep into Russia itself. And, at a certain point, you say, okay, what's the next thing? The next thing is tactical nuclear weapons.
Yeah, so it seems to be easy for NATO, for Biden to march us towards a war with Russia when it's not near our soil. It's not going to be fought on American soil. It's going to be over there. You're talking about launching missiles deep into Russia. Russia would be looking at potentially attacking Europe. So that, whenever we can get into a war, as long as it's somewhere else, right? That's what we've seen all throughout the Middle East. It was just somewhere else, so it doesn't really affect us over here. What are the chances you think that it will escalate to a point where we're actually attacked here on U.S. soil? What would that look like? Would that mean China has to get involved or North Korea has to get involved and they're launching their missiles at us on the West Coast here where I am, which is very scary? Or, how do you see that that playing out? Because it seems to me that if I were in Russia's position, for example, if I were looking at it from their strategic vantage point, I would think the only way to prevent this is to make the other side also fear losing something serious. It seems to be the
Yeah,
only way to stop the escalation.
yeah. Your analysis is pretty good. Look, Great Britain has resisted invasion since the Norman Conquest, which was in 1050 or so, 1047, and even Germany under Hitler could not cross 21 miles of English Strait. People have actually swum the good swimmers go across the English Channel. There are 5,000 miles between us and Russia. There are 6,000 miles between us and China. The only possibility, the only threat that we face from overseas is a thermonuclear threat. It is a genuine threat because I know there are people in the Pentagon and elsewhere who think, well, if we launched a surprise attack, we could knock out all of their missiles and so forth. The problem is they now have hypersonic missiles that on a moment's notice can fly, and they can actually hit places in the United States, hit places in Europe. There is no defense because they fly at such a speed that there's nothing that can catch up with them. Also, we have Russian submarines with carrying over 100 missiles, not missiles, but 100 warheads, and they can rain down destruction on New York, on San Francisco, on Washington D.C., and of course all of the capitals of Europe. They don't want to do this, but we're pushing them further and further. And what's happening now is you've got a lot of very smart people in the Pentagon, in the State Department, and in London, NATO, but they're acting like lemmings, where there's a feeling like, well, we can do this extraordinarily reckless thing, but Joe and Sam and Kathy, they think it's okay, so I guess everything is fine. And meanwhile, we're charging across a cliff like the lemmings, everybody thinking, well, everybody else says it's okay, and the next thing you're over the cliff. We have never faced a threat of thermonuclear war that ever compared to this, and I'm including. I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. I actually saw troops moving through the state of Florida to go and invade Cuba, so I know what it is. And I used to cover myself when I was a little boy. We'd jump under the desks and we'd cover ourselves. What we're faced today, the American people are totally unaware of it. It is 100 times more dangerous than what we encountered back when I was a little boy. It's genuine, and we keep pushing the line further and further.
What do you think the agenda is? Who is behind wanting to push this line where, if this has been decided, as you say, a decade ago, 2014, they were really deciding on, okay, we're going to march ourselves towards a war with Russia. What would be the reason for it?
I think there's a desire to weaken Russia. I think there are certain global interests. There are global oligarchs who look with tremendous interest at the enormous wealth of Russia. Russia has natural resources that are beyond our wildest dreams. Few people are aware of the enormous exports of natural resources. They're the number one exporter of lumber, of wheat, of fertilizer, of natural gas. They're huge exporters of oil, of aluminum. It just goes on and on, cobalt, manganese, all sorts of things. And there are people who say, look, if I could somehow get control or get a big interest in the oil or the gas or the lumber, I could be a trillionaire. And I think some of those people have an influence over the American government. The American people get nothing. We get absolutely nothing from this. We get the bills. We're the bill payers, but we get nothing out of it. It doesn't serve any legitimate national interest of the United States to be involved in the war.
Right. Yeah. Well, especially if we start sending over troops and we're going to be, and then we've got coffins coming home. It's not. I don't know why they would think that this is a good idea. Part of me thinks that this isn't really going to happen. That this is actually sort of that Russia and the United States are sort of in on it. There's kind of a question about even the Cold War, that the USSR and the United States sort of manufactured the Cold War in order to have the arms race and a space race. I mean, it was just really good for industry fundamentally without even having to fire a shot. And so there's kind of this thinking that maybe we're sort of just redoing the same play where it's, yeah, we're amping up rhetoric, making it sound like there's going to be a real true war. I mean, clearly there is an actual war going on in Ukraine, but the idea that NATO's really truly going to get involved, it's really just a matter of escalating, really for industry, really for kind of, forces that we don't really fully understand. Great Reset or something that is trying to march us towards a different place, and that this is all just theater. I don't know if, or because it's just so hard to grasp why there would be any sort of hot war, what the benefit of a hot war would be with Russia or even China for that matter. They keep talking about going in, threatening China or posturing against China because of Taiwan. And, there just really remains a question. What is the actual benefit these days? If you're not looking to conquer land, back in the days, I mean, it was you go to war because you're trying to take something. But now, are they really truly trying to, is there a thinking that they're going to actually take Russia or actually take China? I mean, I just don't see how that's a possibility. So it just feels to me like this is all just escalating theater in order to boost up certain industries and march towards certain agendas that we can't quite, leaving us distracted with running around thinking, oh no, nuclear war, and really they've got something else up their sleeve.
Well, I think if you listen to President Biden, earlier in his presidency, he seemed almost disinterested in things that were happening. He has a passion for this war. And you listen to the speech that you just played. This is not a guy who is just playing games. He is very genuine about it, and he's hoping to hold together this NATO coalition, which, these guys over in Europe, they're very nervous about what's going on, but they're all afraid to stand up to the United States. I really worry that it is genuine, that it's not some sort of a stage presentation, but it's something that is genuine, that has gotten beyond what any one person is likely to control. We seem to be headed. I'd like to tell you that wars are totally rational, but you can go back. I think a good example is what happened with World War I. Historians still debate over who was to blame, how the war started, but it started with the assassination of the Austrian Archduke and his wife. And in the end, 14 million people were dead at the end of First World War. And the stage was set for the Second World War that killed another 50 million. This started with two people. And I think here we're taking steps of phenomenal recklessness. I'll just give you an example. The United States was involved in sinking the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva. It's named after the capital of Russia. 300 young sailors went to the bottom. We probably fired the missiles. We probably controlled them ourselves. We targeted 13 senior Russian field generals for assassination, helped to kill them along working with the Ukrainians. We went beyond, and from what I can tell, there was a drone attack that was launched that went deep into Russia and actually damaged some of their nuclear carrying jet aircraft, some of their nuclear powered or capable bombers. So this was part of their defensive triad. We have various people. We have the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee who recently agreed with a crazy general who made the comment that we're going to be at war with China by 2025. Now, this is the chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee. This isn't just some off-the-wall character. And yet he's saying, well, there's some merit to what this general says. We seem to be determined to drive our car at 100 miles an hour into a bridge abutment. We're just aiming for it, and we got our pedal to the metal. It's a bizarre time. I've never experienced it. I've followed foreign affairs for about 70 years. Since I was a little boy, I had a fascination with it. And I've never seen us in a situation like we are today.
So you think we're headed into not only war with Russia, a hot war, but also one with China as well?
I think so. The strategy behind that is it is absolute madness. If you wanted to take down these two big nuclear powers, you would do them one at a time. For whatever reason, we've got the ball rolling. We've decided to take them both down simultaneously. And it is a terrible strategy for a lot of reasons, but militarily, just purely militarily, it's a bizarre strategy. But we're in a time when rational people are not controlling events.
Right.
I've always said that unlike some countries, you take Russia, President Putin is kind of the ultimate authority. He, obviously everybody has input, but ultimately he makes the decision. In the United States, and particularly with NATO involved too, there is no central organizing intellect behind foreign policy, behind Western foreign policy. It is sort of an amorphous, moving blob that's constantly shifting. And you would like to think that there's somebody who can simply turn off the switch and say, okay, we're shutting this monster down. But it's not clear that there is.
If we were to go into this hot war, from your perspective, would we win?
No, there would be, the United States would be devastated to the point where perhaps 60% of the population would die within the period of a month. Western Europe would be very similar. London would simply be uninhabitable for the next 1,000 years. Same thing with New York City, with Washington, D.C. There would be places that would be spared. Africa would be spared. There would be perhaps areas of Asia, perhaps Latin America. But Western civilization would die in a nuclear war. And I don't know that it matters to some of the people making the decisions today. It's a little bit eerie to watch it taking place.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And scary that they wouldn't care. Scary that they would march us towards us and that they just, for whatever their purpose is, it just is absolutely frightening. So, hopefully we could stop it. Is there any way, do you think, that, it just feels we feel powerless, quite frankly. It just doesn't feel like there's anything we the people can do. Even if the polls show the American people are increasingly becoming less interested in funding the war in Ukraine, it doesn't seem to matter to the politicians. They seem to double down. And then you get the Republicans in the House now, and they a lot of them have been saying no more money for the war in Ukraine. But then they suddenly change their tune when they get there, or they're really posturing hard against China. So they say, oh, no war, no money for war against Ukraine, but we'd happily fund it if we were going to be protecting Taiwan from China. So it just feels like there's no hope for us, we the people. What, from your perspective, can we do?
Well, it is a bipartisan effort. Now there is a block of Republican members of the House who are very concerned about the war and very opposed to it. But these are not the senior people. These are the younger people. They're not the ones who sit on as chairman of committees. So there's not a block of resistance in the Democratic Party. There also was a group that actually sent a letter calling for an end to the war. There were 30 of them, and they sent it to President Biden, and they revoked it the day following its delivery. So I think what we need to do is just through people like you, we need to get the word out what the level of danger is, and that there's no sense from the American perspective. The American people have nothing to gain from this war, not a single thing. And somehow people have to wake up to it, or they may discover that we lose everything.
Senator Dick Black, thank you so much for being here. Also, Colonel Dick Black, thank you for being here and giving us your insight. I know you give a lot of insight on your weekly podcast that people can tune into, but scary analysis, quite honestly, but needed to hear for sure. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim.
All right, guys, it's time to talk about Field of Greens. I love this stuff, actually. It is this wonderful powder. It is made out of whole fruits and vegetables. You mix it into your ice water, or you can sprinkle it onto food, and it gives you your daily dose of all the fruits and vegetables that you need. It's really difficult to get all of our fruits and vegetables into our diet, and maybe you're really busy, or you're just craving something else and you don't want to eat all those fruits and vegetables, and so you're like, oh, not right now. Well, if you drink your Field of Greens, you can feel better about your diet. That is what I do. I really feel like it gives me a lot of energy, helps me sleep better, and also helps me crave less junk food because I'm getting the nutrients my body needs. Field of Greens, again, made out of whole fruits and vegetables that are freeze-dried, no extracts. That's what makes Field of Greens different, is that it's not made out of any extracts. It's all organic fruits and vegetables. And also what makes it different from other products is they actually select carefully which fruits and vegetables to put into the mix to ensure that there's the highest amount of nutrients available to you. So I personally love the lemon lime. I mix it into ice water. I drink that. It tastes like an iced green tea with lemon. However, I have also used the regular original version that is not flavored, and I've mixed that into broth and drank that as a soup. I also really enjoy that, especially with these winter storms going on. It's getting cold. So probably over the next couple of days, I'm going to be drinking it as a broth, to be quite honest with you, just to stay warm. So go to fieldofgreens.com, use the promo code Kim to get 15% off your first order. It is not the cheapest stuff out there, but that is because it's high quality. So take advantage of the 15% off. Try it out. If you like it, you feel better, let me know. Would love to hear from you. Fieldofgreens.com, promo code Kim, 15% off your first order.